The photograph appears unremarkable at first glance. It shows a narrow desert trail stretching beneath a pale Nevada sky, bordered by loose rocks and low scrub. No people are visible. There are no obvious signs of danger, only a path disappearing into rust-colored hills. The scene feels calm, ordinary, almost reassuring. The image was sent casually. It was not framed as a farewell or accompanied by fear or urgency. It was simply a quiet confirmation of presence, a way of saying that the hike had begun. That photograph will become the last confirmed trace of Kenny Veach. In the years that followed, the image was studied repeatedly by investigators, search teams, and thousands of strangers online. Some saw nothing of importance. Others believed it concealed subtle clues, terrain that did not match official search areas, environmental details that seemed overlooked, and a direction that appeared to lead somewhere no one could later identify. The central question persisted. Why did this single image matter so much? And if it truly showed where Kenny was headed, how could he disappear without leaving any trace? Kenny Veach was an experienced desert hiker familiar with the harsh landscapes surrounding southern Nevada. Living near Las Vegas, he regularly explored remote terrain alone. His hikes were not impulsive. They were deliberate excursions into areas he believed he understood. He often recorded these trips, calmly narrating as he walked through empty valleys and rocky ridges, later sharing the footage online. Months before his disappearance, Kenny spoke publicly about something unusual he claimed to have encountered during one of his hikes. He described finding a hidden cave deep in the desert, an opening shaped like the letter M. According to him, the cave emitted a powerful vibration that made him feel physically ill and disoriented. The sensation frightened him enough to leave immediately, despite his experience and familiarity with risk. At first, the story was treated as an anecdote. However, Kenny continued to mention the cave and became increasingly determined to find again. He returned to the desert multiple times, documenting his searches on video. In these recordings, he appeared composed and methodical, pointing out landmarks and explaining his route. Each attempt ended without success. The cave remained elusive. On November 10, 2014, Kenny set out once more. He told his girlfriend he was going on a short hike near a familiar area north of Las Vegas, close to the boundary of Nellis Air Force Base. He packed lightly, carrying water, snacks, his phone, but no equipment intended for extended survival. There was no indication that he expected danger or prolonged absence. Before beginning the hike, he sent a photograph of a rocky desert trailhead. It was intended as a simple check-in. That image marked the last confirmed communication he ever made. When Kenny did not return that evening, concern developed gradually. He had hiked alone many times and sometimes returned late. By the following day, concern turned into alarm. Search efforts began quickly, involving authorities, volunteers, and aerial support. The terrain was vast and unforgiving, filled with ridges, washes, and cliffs that appeared nearly identical from above. No trace of Kenny was found. There was no backpack, no clothing, and no physical evidence indicating where he might have gone. The photograph became the primary reference point for the investigation. Initially, investigators treated the image as a general indicator rather than a precise guide. It was assumed to show a known trailhead, and search efforts focused on established routes Kenny was known to frequent. The digital metadata associated with the photo provided only a broad location, lacking exact GPS coordinates. As a result, the search area remained wide and imprecise. Witness reports further complicated the case. Some hikers claimed to have seen a man resembling Kenny in locations that did not align with official timelines. Others reported hearing distant calls days after his disappearance. None of these accounts could be confirmed, yet none could be conclusively dismissed. Environmental conditions worked against the investigation. Desert wind erases footprints quickly. Sunlight degrades materials, and wildlife scatters remains. As time passed, the likelihood of discovery diminished. The cave Kenny described became a point of debate. Some investigators dismissed it as exaggerated or irrelevant, while others worried that if it existed, it might be located near hazardous terrain. Searching for an unconfirmed feature risked diverting limited resources, and eventually, official efforts moved away from that possibility. As weeks turned into months, the case slowed. No new discoveries emerged. The photograph remained a marker of where Kenny began his hike, not where he might have ended it. Years later, renewed interest arose from independent researchers and online communities. Using improved satellite imagery and mapping tools, they reanalyzed the photograph, considering whether it depicted an unmarked route rather than a known trail. Subtle details gained importance. The orientation of the hills, the shadows indicating time of day, and background rock formations suggested more remote terrain, possibly closer to restricted land. This reinterpretation did not provide definitive answers, but it changed how the case was understood. It suggested Kenny may have ventured farther from established paths than originally assumed. Given his experience and belief that he had discovered something hidden, it was plausible that he relied on instinct rather than markers. Despite continued interest in volunteer searches, Kenny Veach has never been found. No remains have been recovered, and no definitive explanation has emerged. His case remains unresolved. For his family, the absence continues without closure. There are no answers to confirm whether he was injured, fell, or reached the place he believed he had discovered. The desert has offered none. Kenny's disappearance highlights the limits of modern technology. A single photograph can outlast a person, offering the illusion of clarity while withholding the truth. It shows where he began his final journey, leaving behind a question that still lingers. How often do we mistake knowing where someone started for understanding where they ultimately ended?